Hello and welcome to this online video lecture about the stock system. The stock system exists as a kind of an addition to the type of naming that you've already learned about so that it can specify the charge of the positive ion in the compound. And the reason why we have a system to specify the charge of the positive ion in a compound is because there are many atoms, more specifically a lot of the transition metals, that can form more than one positive ion. For example, the element lead commonly forms a +2 ion, but it also pretty commonly forms a +4 ion. And the interesting thing about these metals that can have different ions is that the different ions actually have different properties, and so they create compounds with different properties. So it's really important that you can distinguish between a compound that has lead +2 in it and a compound that has lead +4 in it. And so in chemistry, we use the stock system to do that. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to recognize when you should use the stock system, and you should be able to convert back and forth between names and formulas that are using the stock system. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's start with the names. So, as I stated at the start of the video, the stock system is a way of indicating the charge of the positive ion in a compound. The way that they do that in names is by using Roman numerals. So let's say that I had an oxide of lead, which would just be a lead ion combined with an oxygen ion. So I've already introduced the idea to you that lead can form an ion that's +2 or +4. When we name the lead oxide, the way that we indicate which of the two of these is in the compound is by using Roman numerals in parentheses. And you put the charge of the positive ion right after the positive ion's name in parentheses. So if the lead oxide has the lead +2 ion, you put a Roman numeral 2. And so lead 2 oxide means that it has the +2 lead ion in it. On the other hand, if the compound is formed with the +4 ion, then that compound's name would be lead 4 oxide. And that would mean that it has the +4 ion of lead in it. So anytime you see a compound that has parentheses and Roman numerals inside of the parentheses after a name, this is super important because kids get confused about this all the time. The parentheses tell you the charge of the positive ion. The charge. And usually the most common mistake that students will make is they'll want that to be how many of the ions there are in the compound. Like they'll want there to be 2 lead ions in the compound when they see lead 2. But that 2 is not telling you how many there are, it's telling you the charge of the lead ions in the compound. So that's how it works with the names. The names use Roman numerals to indicate the charge of the metal that's in the compound. So then, what does that look like in the formulas? Well, let's say I have copper 1 chloride. And I want to make the formula for that. Well, I know that copper is Cu, and I know that chloride is Cl. I know that the charge of chloride is -1. Well, the charge of copper in this compound, again, is indicated by this Roman numeral. So the charge of the copper in this compound is +1. The Roman numeral tells you the charge. And so then I just use the normal rules for forming a formula. The charges have to equal 0, and in this case they do. Another common ion of copper is +2 though. So that would be copper 2 chloride. Well, it still has a copper ion and a chloride ion together. But in this compound, the Roman numeral here is telling you that the charge of the copper ion, remember the Roman numeral is the charge, is plus 2. And chloride's charge is minus 1. So we have to get the charges to equal out, and we can just use the switching trick here. So we're going to say that there have to be 2 chlorides with the 1 copper. So copper 1 chloride's formula is CuCl. Copper 2 chloride's formula is CuCl2. So now that you know that the stock system uses Roman numerals to represent the charge of a positive ion in a compound, you should be able to switch back and forth between the name of a compound using the stock system and the formula of a compound using the stock system. So when do you use the stock system? Well, the rule that you can use for this class is that anytime a compound contains a transition metal, you should be using the stock system. So transition metals are metals that are in the D or the P block or the F block. So anytime you have a metal from the D, P, or F block, you should probably be using the stock system. And just as an aside, so you know, it's never incorrect to use the stock system. It's just most chemists don't use it with metal ions that can only have 1 charge, like sodium or magnesium. So you should always use it with transition metals in the D, P, or F block. And you know, unless you're worried about looking silly, you probably shouldn't use it with metals that only have 1 charge. So that is the stock system. Thanks for watching this online video lecture. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask in class.